All right, let me start again. I nearly coughed and died there. All right, so this is part 2 of 8.1. Say B because it's the second letter of the alphabet, in case you did not know. 8.1, we're looking at why England. Why does the Industrial Revolution start in England? Why doesn't it start in, say, Slovakia or Russia or Djibouti? I mean, why not? So we're going to look here at why the Industrial Revolution starts in England. We've already talked, I think, briefly about a couple of the reasons. You probably could list them or come up with them in our last The Roots podcast. But now we're going to talk about more reasons of why it starts in England. And this is a handy-dandy slide because I basically have everything here you would need to know about why they started in England, and by some fun graphics, some of which I really don't know what I was trying to get at when I created this a couple years ago, but what the heck. Just to go over them quickly with you, if you look at number 1, we're going to talk about natural resources. England's got a few things that other countries don't have as much, and it's going to help England kind of get what it needs. Some materials that they're going to have that other countries don't have. It's going to give it what it needs. I basically said the same thing over again. Number 2, consumer price revolution, right? We talked about the merchants, how they're able to make some moolah. Number 3, the British government was very, very quick to stop their industrial people and secrets from leaving the country. Yeah, I'll just tell you this right now. We're going to talk about the majority of these in this podcast, in this part. This is kind of just an overview, so don't worry about trying to get all these down or anything. It's really just serving for an intro. Number 4, hands off. Parliament was not very handsy in terms of regulating the British economy at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. That will change over time, but at the beginning, Parliament is like, go for it. Business, we'll let you do what you want to do. Technological introductions, that's still not the right word. How about inventions, like the steam engine? We'll talk about that in a minute. Britain had a wide array of colonies that it could use to create raw materials. That's number 6. Number 7, we have the enclosure movement. Number 8, that guy. We'll talk about him in a minute. Number 9, the railroad, we'll discuss. Number 10, some coal and iron ore, which could connect to number 1. And then number 11, a good work ethic from the Puritan section of the British Isles. That Protestant work ethic, and I really do enjoy that graphic. Jesus is coming, look busy. Okay, so looks like my text is a little too big. So what I'm going to do here is, let's see if I can do this. I don't know if I can. Okay, so you can see that. I'll try to fill out the rest of it when we get down to it. Anyway, economic and social factors. Britain has a lot of things in place that help it grow in terms of business and economic growth. First of all, natural resources. These factories are going to need coal and iron ore to power, especially coal, to power their machines. Now, that's going to start with, at least the early machines and factories, they're going to be powered with H2O, with water at the beginning. But as time goes on, new inventions like the steam engine that you've hopefully read about is going to help power the machines in the factories. And railroads, we'll get to that in a second. However, you can't power them without coal, and there is fortunately some coal there in England for them to use, at least at the beginning. There's already a strong middle class that has the incentive to invest and has the ability to invest in new businesses, new inventions, things of that nature. The Atlantic economy, thanks to the commercial revolution and exploration, have been going well, and also the Protestant work ethic, as we just mentioned, that Puritans or someone of a Puritan background, and even Anglican to a degree, would feel the need perhaps to work hard, because if not working hard, what are you doing with your life? You're being lazy. That is a kick in God's pants. And then finally, a laissez-faire government. And the Parliament is permitting economic growth to happen because a lot of Parliament's members are upper class, and their interests personally are with the growth of these businesses, of these factories. So if the factories do well, they do well. Why would they create laws that would hurt their own wallet? Sure, it's a little cynical, but that's going to be kind of the way this thing gets going, is that the people in Parliament benefit from the growth of this industry. It's just the way it is. Now, in terms of technological factors, like we've already talked about, coal and the development of new technologies like the steam engine literally push the revolution forward. Because now it's going to impact the way that you can move goods from place to place. Technology matters not as much as the machine itself, but it's how you get goods from point A to point B. And I don't know if you've ever had to burp, but I've got it coming, so if there just is a burp that comes out, I apologize. Just wanted to give you a little update. So back to transportation. Canals, hard surface roads, creating the ability to get from point A to point B quicker. But the big change is the steamboat, because now we can motor upriver. You know, back in the day when you had no way to power against the current, you were just floating downriver. And if you had to go from point A to point B and it was against the current, you had to take it by road. But now with a steamboat, we can take it by water. And that is a huge change. It's a big change in the way that we can transport our goods from place to place. And that advantage and that advance creates incredible economic opportunity for England. So, yes, we have talked about like the machines themselves, the things that were used in factories, and you've read a little bit about that, but it's getting things place to place that really makes the difference. And something that really made that happen even more than even canals or steam engines or the like, was the railroad. George Stephenson develops the first commercial railroad, the first locomotive. Named it the Rocket, and it was motoring at 16 miles per hour. Look out, world. But why is it important, this railroad? Look at this impact. It's first of all cheaper. You know, there was actually a question on the AP test last year, a short answer question. Why was the railroad a turning point in European history? You had to like either agree or disagree there was a turning point. It's obviously agree. Disagree, get off your high horse. It is a big change. It's cheaper than transporting by water. It allows for new markets. We can travel from place to place a lot easier. But I like this. It allows people of the country of rural areas to travel, to create new areas of space for themselves. We have people that now working in the city can live in the country. It does create that as well. And it makes the world smaller, this new invention, the railroad, the iron horse, as it's called. Big change, big things happening. But again, like you can talk about people like, oh, I'm going to go on the train. I mean, you can whatever, Hogwarts Express. The big thing is it can move goods even quicker than a canal, and obviously quicker than horse and buggy. If you move it from place to place quicker, you can make more and more money. I'm telling you, this is where the money is made. So kind of in a review, by 1850, Great Britain is the place to be. You can look at all the stats there. GNP is like GDP, gross national product, I think in this case. We've become the most powerful economic country in the world, Great Britain, and it's because of the Industrial Revolution. In fact, they create and build what's called the Crystal Palace. More or less, think of it as the Versailles of England. It's an amazing structure built in South London to celebrate the economic and industrial dominance of the British Isles in the mid-century of the 19th century. This was built to commemorate, I believe, a World's Fair or something similar to that. Unfortunately, the Crystal Palace burned down in like it's in the 1930s, and the whole world was burning down, thanks Hitler. But in any case, it at the time really symbolized the industrial dominance of Great Britain. It's called the Crystal Palace. So we looked at, like, you know, England's awesome, but why not other countries? I mean, why not other places in the world? Until about the year 1815, that's when people get serious about industrialization in other places besides England. And, you know, it begins and ends with this guy right here, Napoleon Bonaparte. If we're going to be fighting on the continent, if you remember, even Britain was involved in these fights. in these wars against Napoleon, but they were not on the mainland. While Napoleon and guillotines and all that's happening in France and on the mainland, Austria and Prussia involved, Russia eventually scorched earth policy. England is building factories at home. And yeah, they're sending their navy out and their army out to fight, but at home they're investing in businesses and factories, and they're building their economic might while these other countries are fighting. Also, the British government kept the countries from, or kept individuals who were in industrialization from leaving. Eventually they got out because you can't keep secrets. It's just not going to happen. But at least that started there for a while. Again, Piper's very interested in what I have to say about the Industrial Revolution as she just lays here on the bed, looking lazy, this round hound that she is. Yes, good dog. But Piper also wants to know, she's like Mr. Osborne, because that's what she calls me. That's my dog calls me Mr. Osborne. She said, what about the rest of Europe? When do they industrialize? And I say, Piper, let me tell you. It comes in waves. Western Europe, Central Europe, and then Eastern Europe. That's kind of the wave of industrialization. The United States also, you could consider in that first wave being with Belgium, Netherlands, France. The one thing to know, I think, of this, and we're going to talk about Germany and their industrialization later, but it's why these countries in Southern Europe, and that includes Southern Italy, Eastern Europe, the Polands, well, not that Poland was there, but like the Ottoman Empire, Russia, they just don't have the resources, and they do not have, and this is the big thing, it's not on here, but listen here, they do not have the middle class to instigate industrialization. Listen, if I'm a noble, if I'm Richie Rich, if I'm sitting enjoying the high life, I don't want to build factories. I got money already. What's the point for me? Get more money? Ha! Just tax the peasants more. And speaking of the peasants, it's not like they got the money to start a factory or to invest in capital to build one. They're just needing the bread. Yes, Piper, I said bread. Calm down. But they just want to survive. So they're not going to have any chance of kind of building and investing. So you don't really see any industrialization there. Partly because there is not a middle class to really trigger that growth. So in terms of industrialization growing, you do see government support industrialization more on the continent than it did in England, although we did make the connection between members of parliament and industrialization. You also see some central bank starts called the Crédit Mobilier in France, providing the means to invest. And then you also, and I want to leave you with this here, free trade zones and foreign tariffs protecting native industries. Free trade zones. There's a zone that's created in the German states called the Zollverein. And what the Zollverein basically is a collection of German states, including Prussia, not Austria, keep that in mind for later, but these states basically come together and say, listen, we'll trade goods between one another and not have any sort of tariff. So we can freely trade without there being a tax, an extra tax, being put on those goods to discourage us from keeping goods to ourselves. This is very not mercantilism, right? I mean, we're not supposed to do this. But the free trade is happening, and it creates a sense of unity even inside those German states. So again, something to keep in mind is, economically speaking, we're starting to see some independence and unity from the German states. And note that it's Prussia kind of leading this and not Austria, something to keep in mind for later. So again, that's basically what we have here. Why England and then industrialization on the continent. We're also in the following podcast, we're going to look into how the Industrial Revolution impacts social conditions. Factory conditions, we'll look at that a little bit. Living conditions, family dynamics, things of that nature, and that if we had a new industrial revolution today, how that would impact your relationship with others around you. So that's all we got at this one, and I will figure out the final words to say here, and I'll just keep talking.